be here. He's like, how the heck would they do that? I said, well, they thaw the field off.
Well, the turf is kept at a certain temperature with underground heating.
Yeah.
That's how the turf is already installed. I think we brought that up, and so they have to keep it healthy year round and available for use year round. Now they'll keep it covered most of the time, but yeah, if it's snowing, if there's 3 feet of snow on the ground, they're going to have a game
play
there.
it.
Yeah. And it's interesting. The heated turf will be interesting to see how it works because if we look at football, really Chicago and Green Bay are the only ones that have grass heated fields, aren't they?
And we saw that classic World Cup qualifier in Colorado. You were at that game, weren't you? I mean that pitch was covered.
That was
in
6
snow.
inches of snow,
and it was covered in snow.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not sure how efficient. Like if the snow was really coming down here in Minneapolis or St. Paul, like it was out there in Colorado, I don't know if it could keep up. I'm curious because you have your turf. But then under that, you have a fairly significant layer of sand. It's mostly sand, and then obviously you'd have your heating coils underneath that.
Sure.
It may not be able to keep up with a heavy snowfall.
Yeah, and I remember. I suppose maybe Cleveland has a heated field. I bet
they have. I mean, every team now, I'm sure, has to have a heated field.
But it's interesting to see how even when you're talking American football, which has way more money than MLS.
Yep.
How you look at Chicago and Green Bay's fields by mid-December, they don't look like the pristine glory that they were in September.
No.
It's heated. Yeah, they keep it from going dormant, but it looks pretty trashy by the end of the season.
To give you a little quick note here, we played this game when the Vikings were out of the dome because of the collapse.
Yes.
Playing at TCF when they didn't have a heated field.
That would have been back in 2010. Yep.
They didn't have a heated field because we hadn't moved in there yet to build a new stadium. So there was a game. Who was it against? It was
Are you talking about the Vikings?
Yeah, the Vikings.
It was back in 2010. It was against the Bears, I believe.
Yeah, and it was a terrible field.
It was, and just to put it in perspective, at that point, that the home of the Golden Gophers football team, the Gophers' last game, depending on the season, is going to at the latest is going to be basically this weekend, the weekend after Thanksgiving would be the absolute latest. So it wasn't designed to have a heated field because for the most part they don't need a heated field.
Yep.
And one of the conditions when the Vikings moved in there semi-permanently for the 2 years, kind of like the Loons did.
Yep, they had to build a heated field.
They put the heating coils underneath it, and that was nice for the Gophers, but it was something the Vikings paid for. So it wasn't heated. In fact, we don't need to go into details about that game, but that was the game that Brett Favre started the game even though he didn't think he was going to, actually partially because of the fact that it wasn't heated, it was extremely hard, and he actually got knocked down, hit his head, and got concussed.
Right.
As a result of that.
Yeah. So I think most major league fields now, if they're outdoors, are heated fields.
I would imagine
if they're going to play there
in this climate.
And the new stadium. Allianz Field will be a heated field.
It'll be the only one in the league.
Really? Yeah. So Chicago and KC aren't heated? You'd think that Chicago would be heated.
Yeah, they don't care.
Yeah, they're never going to host an MLS Cup final, so...
Well, they did build the stadium in a crappy part of town anyways.
And my understanding is it's the only one, so even KC doesn't
I guess that'd be right. Well, what about...
because you got Toronto,
Colorado,
too.
Though.
Yeah, Colorado definitely is not either.
And Salt Lake City.
Yeah, they don't get that much snow.
They get cold, though.
Oh, yeah, no one cares about the cold.
But still, the ground's going to be... that kind of amazes me. Why wouldn't you?
Now, let's put it this way. If Colorado has heated coils, they did not use them against Costa Rica in the U.S. game.
All right.
There definitely was not. Unless they just didn't keep up, like you mentioned.
Yeah, which is a possibility if it's a heavy fall.
Oh, you think the MLS would say, if you're going to have a stadium above this latitude, or,
the Mason-Dixon line.
You got to have a heated field. Yeah. It doesn't cost that much more.
Yeah. You wouldn't think so.
And from a club standpoint, too, it's something, if you thought it was if that's something you knew you were going to have to deal with, even getting into the late part of the regular season. Yeah. The end of October can get awfully cold here in Minnesota. Right. So, from a team standpoint, it's something, it's not cheap to do that. It's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't have the number in front of me, what, say, the Vikings paid for TCF, but...
Does it matter, though, Dave?
Well, it could matter.
Guess what? Our owner's paying for all of it because he pays everything himself.
That's right.
true.
That's the way it works, guys. That's why I love our owner. Even though he did some shady things back in the day. But I still love him.
Yeah. So I guess to wrap that up, I think we can all agree that was a good investment. If you did
Definitely. Yeah.
whether we have to or don't.
So let's quickly, guys, before we go to our next topic here, which will nicely go into this one. Out of those 4 teams, who do you guys think is going to win the championship? You have New York, you got Atlanta, you got Sporting KC, and you got the Portland Timbers.
I say it depends on the outcome of the Atlanta Red Bull game. Mm-hmm. If New York wins the final.
Okay.
If Atlanta wins, I think KC will beat Portland and KC will win the final.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go with Sporting KC as well. Just as I'm not going to say who's going to win or whatever. I think Sporting KC is the team to beat. I like them.
All right, and I don't necessarily like my predicted team, but I'm going to go with Atlanta to win it all.
So I should also preface, sorry not to cut you off, but
no.
I'm not picking Atlanta because I'm being biased. I'm not picking Atlanta because KC's defense is very good, and Atlanta has a very difficult time against good defenses.
Yes, they do.
So I think if KC advances, which I think they will, and Atlanta would advance, I still think KC's going to do better.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go back.
So you basically you had 2 picks in there. You get the New York Red Bulls and Sporting KC. Your odds of winning our little side bet here are pretty good.
Well, or they could be really bad after,
They could be.
round.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, Dave Sterling, you put together a list of salary rank, kind of looking at if they win or if they win championships or what?
Yeah, so what I did was this was spawned by FC Cincinnati's owner commenting that they weren't going to pay any more money for DPs this season.
So yeah, I guess so. What you're boiling down to is you're asking the question: hey, does spending money is that? Can you buy a championship?
Yep.
Can you by spending money? Can you be a perennial?
Exactly.
Playoff team.
And so the big thing is a lot of people, and in fact, even a couple MLS talking heads said, "Oh my goodness, FCC is following the Minnesota United model."
Sure.
And how has that worked out? And I was like, well, because I am a little, though I agree we not done well, I'm a little biased, so I took a little offense to the fact that they're saying Minnesota just is shit. So I decided to sit down and I looked back the last 5 seasons.
Yep.
And what I did was I took all the playoff teams, I put them all into tables for each of the season, and then I went back and researched the team payrolls for the seasons and set out their rank. So, and I'll even put this out on the interweb. And so I have 5 tables starting in 2014. Each table has all 12, or in past 2014 cases, 10 playoff teams. It has their final points total, their seeding, and also the rank by salary in terms of the payroll. And I just basically went through and I highlighted who made the semis, I highlighted who won, and who was the runner-up in the cup final. And I just wanted to see if there was a correlation between spending significant money, spending money, period, and making the playoffs. Now, what I did was I split them up into 3 tiers. So you had the top tier, the top third, the middle third, the bottom third. As I was telling you guys before the podcast, obviously there's never been 21 teams or 18 teams, something divisible by 3. Yeah. So what I did was I said, okay, in 2014 there were 19 teams, so there were 7 in the top tier and then 6 in the middle and in the bottom. And then when they jumped up to 20 teams, then I put 7 in the top, 7 in the middle, and 6. So I've always favored that top tier first.
Sure.
And then built down. Okay. And what I found was that as one would expect, you spend money, you're going to reach the playoffs. Reaching the playoffs, 41% chance. If you're in the top third, it's a 34% chance, 34.5% chance in the middle third, and you've got a 24% chance in the bottom third. Interestingly with this, if you favored the lower tier, so again, this is arbitrary, so I could do whatever the hell I want. If I went back and said, okay, we're going to add that extra team to the bottom and shift everything up, that completely changes the situation. And all of a sudden, the chance of reaching the playoffs in the top tier drops below 40%. The chance of reaching the playoffs in the middle tier jumps almost to 40%, and everything gets evened out.
Okay.
And so, and in particular, this happened in 2014 with Dallas. It happened in 2015 with Columbus, who happened to be added to the middle, and they should have been at the bottom.
Okay.
And they ended up winning it. So it was almost a bottom tier team winning. And then also in 16 with Red Bulls was added to the middle. And in 17, Atlanta was added to the top. And basically what I found, like I said, is if you consider that arbitrary tiering, there's really no significant benefit to spending a lot of money.
Well, yeah, and that just looking at these, looking at your charts here, and there isn't a significant pattern that jumps out at me. That you look at, maybe there's a trend. You say you have the Toronto FC for they're number one in spending. Okay, they had back-to-back years of reaching the final.
Yep.
So, but then you look at previous years, and you just don't have that same pattern. You don't say, oh, you have a top one or two or three payroll team reaching the semis or even finals. So there is not much of a pattern. And then those percentages that you mentioned, they do. Okay, you do have a little bit, to reach the playoffs, 41% if you're the top three. And it does drop off. Like, you might think there's a pattern there, but I don't know if that number, the chance of making the playoffs, I don't know if that justifies the difference in payroll.
Right. And the thing is when you look at the semis chance and then the final chance is going to change significantly this year, because unless Atlanta wins it, the middle or bottom tier is going to get the cup win. So it's going to shift. And I figured out that if, say, for instance, if New York won the cup, the top third ends up being about 50%. The middle third drops a bit, and then the bottom third climbs to almost 20%. So all of a sudden, it starts shifting a little bit. And the same with the semis this year, with the fact that only one top tier team made it to the semis. It's actually pretty even, 45, 30, 25. I think that's pretty even.
Yeah.
Considering, and I'll get to this in a second, considering how little money it would take to go from the bottom third to the middle third, or even the top third, there really isn't much argument to spend a significant amount. And Toronto is the one that I really want to key in on.
We don't have... So, MLS doesn't have a salary cap.
They do.
They do have a salary cap.
They do.
But they have that DP that
they have that DP.
throws
so,
everything off.
So we have a salary cap in MLS, but because of the DP stuff and the TAM and all that other stuff that's going on, there's a lot of leeway going on here.
And looking from afar, and if you looked at a list of team payrolls, which obviously you have, it almost looks like there isn't a salary cap. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a technical. It's technically there is a salary cap, but because of, I guess I'll call them a loophole of the designated player,
right,
and the varying allocation money that every team has. Yes, there's technically a limit, but that limit gets so skewed in so many different ways.
It's not like, okay, so let's go to other major sports, okay? So NFL football has a salary cap.
Yep.
Okay. And we've seen that the teams that spend more money in NFL pretty much do better.
Correct. Yeah. And I was just going to ask, just before we dive too deep, I wanted to say this is like, I would think, if you're in that top tier, if you're spending a fairly good amount of money on salary, your team's salary, do you think and you do that consistently, say over a 10-year span, and you're in the top tier, do you think you